A sudden call from my sister, Kristen. After stealing my husband, what could she possibly want? When I answered, I heard the crying of a child and Kristen's triumphant voice over the phone. I took your child from the apartment and brought her home. Ben and I will raise her properly in your place. Additionally, my husband, who left me and my daughter for his mistress. My sister laughed and joked, the daughter also wants a young and beautiful mom like me. My sister has always harassed me since we were children. But now she is trying to take not only my husband but also my daughter from me. However, before anger, a question arose in my mind. What is going on here? The words my sister spoke and the current situation did not connect at all. And I asked her in confusion. Whose child is this? It's a bit hard to say. After my words, my sister and husband, who had been taking my daughter with ease, seemed shocked. They must be pale over the phone. The two of them have done something irreversible. The worst development awaits them. I am Megan. We are a family of 4 with my parents and my sister. Our parents are kind and gentle, and they raised us sisters without any hardship. Like my parents, I am often told by others that I have a generous personality. However, Kristen, my sister who is 2 years younger, was different from us with a strong and aggressive character. And since she became aware, she seemed to have a strong hostility towards me, constantly harassing me. My oldest memory is from when we were in kindergarten, and each of us sisters received a stuffed animal as a Christmas present. I received a pink rabbit stuffed animal and my sister a blue cat stuffed animal. We were both thrilled to receive exactly what we asked Santa for. And we were always together, whether sleeping or going out. One morning, when I woke up, the stuffed animal that should have been next to me was gone. I searched around the bed but couldn't find it. In a panic, I asked my sister, who had woken up earlier, if she knew where the stuffed animal was. But she said she didn't know. As I was worried about the stuffed animal, my mother told me I was going to be late. So I started getting ready for kindergarten. When my sister called me saying she had found the stuffed animal. Rushing to where my sister was, she pointed inside the trash can. The trash can. I wondered but reluctantly looked inside. And there was my stuffed animal. Shredded and with cotton spilling out as if it had been cut with scissors. Seeing that, I burst into tears. I vaguely remember our parents rushing over to comfort me after hearing the commotion. But I was too shocked by what happened to the stuffed animal to remember clearly. My sister was still young at the time, so my parents consoled me by saying it wasn't on purpose. But I still vividly remember my sister laughing loudly while I was crying. Her smile is etched in my memory, not the innocent one of a child, but rather like that of a devil. At that time, I didn't even have the capacity to think about why she was laughing. But as her harassment became a daily occurrence, I realized that her laughter was from the joy of setting me up. The harassment from my sister continued daily after that incident. She would steal my snacks, push me into a field on the way to school, or tear my study notes. Every time she harassed me, I would get angry and confront her. But since Kristen was stronger-willed and more articulate, she would feign ignorance or angrily yell back at me, leaving me always feeling defeated. Our parents would scold her each time, but Kristen would appear remorseful only in front of them, never genuinely repenting or stopping the harassment. As we grew older, her methods of harassment escalated. Thanks to the care of my parents and friends, nothing serious happened. But she went as far as to post slander about me anonymously online, steal money from my piggy bank, or suddenly push me onto the road. All of which could have led to crimes or accidents. Having been harassed by my sister from a young age, I could never figure out why she hated me so much. In middle school, after a friend gave me a bracelet for my birthday, which I cherished, she broke it. Crying, I asked her, "Why do you harass me?" After thinking for a moment, Kristen just spat out, "I just hate your existence. There's nothing I can do about that." I was speechless at my sister's response. While she was turbulent only in relation to me, she managed her other interpersonal relationships and school life reasonably well. Our parents, wondering if there was something wrong with how they raised us, patiently dealt with my sister, who only ever seemed remorseful in the moment. They tried various approaches to connect with her, but she remained unchanged. When we reached the third year of middle school and it was time to choose our paths, my patience had reached its limit. Despite our parents and me getting angry or lecturing her, Kristen never stopped her harassment. Realizing it was impossible to understand each other, I chose to attend a high school far enough from home that I couldn't commute, opting for dormitory life. It was hard to leave my parents whom I loved, but it was the only way to escape from my sister. My parents felt guilty for not being able to resolve the situation with Kristen, but they supported my decision, understanding that it would ease my mind. I spent 3 years in high school dormitory life and then chose to live alone during my university years without returning to my parents' home, where my sister was. During my time away, I kept in regular contact with my parents, but I stayed completely estranged from Kristen, not even exchanging messages. After I started working, my parents told me Kristen had successfully found a job but later left home saying, "I'm going to live with my boyfriend." She occasionally returned home, but rarely responded to our parents' messages. And they didn't even know where she was living, keeping her whereabouts unknown. While my parents sighed over my sister's whimsical behavior, I was somewhat relieved to hear she had moved out, allowing me to visit home without having to be cautious. As time passed, I married Ben, my boyfriend from university. My parents were delighted about our marriage. Since Kristen was still out of touch, we couldn't have a face-to-face meeting. Though our relationship was poor, she was still my sister, and I felt a bit sad not being able to share the news of my marriage with her. I hoped that with time and as we both matured, Kristen's attitude towards me would calm down. I hoped that when we met next, we could have a normal sisterly relationship. In my heart, I wished for this. And 3 years after getting married, I was living a fulfilling life with my beloved husband and our adorable child. I quit my job after giving birth and was busy with housework and child rearing. It was a busy life, but I was happy. However, not long after our child was born, my husband began coming home late more frequently. He also started working on weekends, saying he had business trips. Before, my husband hardly ever worked overtime, and he had never gone on business trips. Despite feeling a bit suspicious, I believed him when he said, "I've been transferred to a different department, and continue to handle parenting on my own." One night, after returning from a business trip, my husband, who had already eaten outside, went straight to the bedroom saying he was tired after a bath. While sighing at the suit he left on the living room sofa, I picked it up to hang it and noticed something hard in the pocket. "What's this?" Curious, I took it out, and it turned out to be a lipstick. I was so shocked I froze. It was a brand I had never used, certainly not mine. Why was there lipstick in my husband's suit pocket when he was supposed to be on a business trip? I was shaken, and my hands trembled as I held the lipstick. His recently sudden late returns, frequent business trips on weekends. I was convinced my husband was having an affair. Why? With whom? I felt an urge to confront my husband immediately, but he was already asleep, and I was too upset to speak properly. Moreover, it seemed better to gather evidence and discuss this calmly. Thinking this, I took a photo of the lipstick as evidence, and searched online for a detective agency to gather proof of my husband's affair. I pretended everything was normal while waiting, and about a week later, I received the investigation report from the agency. During the day when my husband was at work, I nervously checked the contents and was shocked. The name written as my husband's affair partner was my sister, Kristen. Where did they meet? Why did she know he was married? Many questions popped into my head. But what dominated my thoughts were all the times Kristen had harassed me in the past. Could it be? But if anyone would do it, it would be Kristen. Surely, this was also part of her harassment against me. The investigation report also included a background check on Kristen. And her mobile number was listed, so I impulsively called it. When Kristen answered, I shouted, "What on earth are you thinking?" She seemed to realize it was me right away and giggled on the other end. "Oh, did you find the lipstick?" That lipstick was deliberately placed by Kristen to make me aware of the affair. I was sure of it from her tone. I confronted Kristen, trying to contain my anger. Laughing, she proudly began to spill the details as if boasting. Kristen learned about my marriage when she visited our parents' home after a long time. It seems she saw my wedding photo, which our parents cherished. Then, as a way to harass me, she came up with the idea of stealing my husband. Kristen searched for my husband's social media using his name, sent him messages, and made contact. Identifying herself as my sister, she lied to my husband, saying, "I've been terribly treated by my family. And I wasn't even told about my sister's marriage." Painting me and our parents as terrible people and deceiving my husband. She kept him from telling me, claiming these were confidential consultations. And frequently contacted him, manipulating him to develop romantic feelings for her. My husband believed everything Kristen said, betraying me and our daughter according to Kristen's plan, and entered into a relationship with her. Harassment. This goes beyond mere harassment. I felt a mix of anger and disgust at my sister's story. I have plans later, so I'm going to hang up now. Ben is head over heels for me, so it looks like you'll be getting a divorce, sis. Good luck. After revealing everything, Kristen hung up laughing without waiting for my reply. After the call with Kristen, I just sat down on the spot. I had been harassed by Kristen countless times growing up. But I thought if she had grown up and reflected on her actions, I could let bygones be bygones. I had hoped we could become normal sisters. Yet, Kristen was still only thinking of putting me down. And in such a cowardly way. Tears overflowed, but just then, my daughter, who had been napping in the next room, seemed to wake up. Right, I can't just sit here hurt. For my daughter's sake, I needed to talk to my husband. I hugged my daughter, gathering my strength. That night, after putting my daughter to bed, I confronted my husband with the investigation report as evidence of his affair. However, even after seeing it, my husband showed no remorse and didn't even apologize. Even as I asserted everything Kristen said was nonsense, my husband didn't believe me at all. Fully trusting Kristen's side of the story. Truly, love is blind. Then my husband said he wanted to be with Kristen and asked for a divorce. Though it was Kristen who initiated it. I couldn't continue with someone who so easily betrayed me and our daughter. So I agreed to the divorce but insisted I wouldn't give up custody of our daughter. However, my husband also wanted to keep custody, and our opinions clashed head-on. I couldn't give in on that point, so the divorce discussion remained unresolved. We talked until dawn, but it looked like it was going to be a long battle. So we paused the discussion, and my husband, saying he'd live with Kristen, left the house without even looking at our sleeping daughter. Why would a father who hadn't been involved with his daughter suddenly want custody? If he had paternal feelings, he shouldn't have cheated. Various thoughts crossed my mind, but no matter how I argued, he stubbornly insisted on not giving up custody. I continued to negotiate with my husband via phone and email. But the conversation remained at a deadlock, and we hadn't even managed to divorce yet. After my husband left, I started looking for a job to prepare for divorce, while my parents took care of my 1-year-old daughter. I explained everything to my parents about Kristen's harassment and the affair with my husband, which led to the divorce. My parents were as shocked as I was, never imagining Kristen would go this far. And they apologized to me on behalf of Kristen, crying. However, I knew it wasn't my parents' fault from how they had always dealt with Kristen. I asked my parents to take care of my daughter while I looked for a job during the divorce. My parents gladly accepted to help with anything they could. One night, as I was putting my daughter to bed, I received a call on my phone. Who could it be at this hour? When I checked the screen, it was from my sister, Kristen. I hadn't spoken to her since I confronted her about the affair. Curious, I answered the phone, and I could hear the sound of a child crying on the other end. A child? According to my parents, Kristen was supposed to be unmarried. And I heard she didn't have any children. Confused by this, I then heard Kristen's triumphant voice along with the child's cries. I've taken your child from the apartment. You're fussing over custody, right? Ben and I will raise her properly in your place. I also heard what must be my husband next to her, jokingly agreeing. Our daughter also says she wants a young and beautiful mom like me. While hearing their mocking laughter, I was confused. What are Kristen and my husband talking about? Many questions arose. Whose crying is that, anyway? Because my daughter is right here, sleeping next to me. I tried to calm my confused mind and asked Kristen calmly. Whose child is that? It's a bit hard to say. But my daughter is here with me right now, you know? Huh? Kristen sounded baffled over the phone. What? But I took this child from your house. Upon further discussion, it turned out Kristen had broken into the apartment where my husband and I used to live and took a child she found sleeping there. Hearing this made my blood run cold. That's because after my husband left, I moved out of the apartment immediately after explaining the situation to my parents and relocated near their home. Since the apartment was leased in my name, I could move out without my husband's consent. Therefore, someone else should be living in our old apartment now. I was planning to inform my husband if he contacted me, so he didn't know about the move yet. When I explained the situation, they realized their mistake. And I could hear them freaking out over the phone. In a panic, they started blaming each other, creating a chaotic scene. I sternly told them, this is not the time for that, and said they should quickly take the child to the police. By now, the child's parents must have realized their child was missing and be in distress. However, upon hearing the word police, Kristen panicked and hung up the phone unilaterally. This is serious. Thinking this, I immediately called my parents to explain the situation. My parents were shocked by what Kristen had done and said we should go to the police immediately. I left my daughter with my parents and went to the police to explain in detail. When I arrived at the police station and was explaining what I heard from my sister, Kristen and my husband showed up at the police crying, with the child in tow. Seeing me, my husband approached me angrily, yelling, "This is all your fault for moving out without telling. But this is a police station." Before he could reach me, he was restrained by the police officers around. Subsequently, Kristen and my husband were taken in for questioning immediately. According to the police, a couple who moved into the apartment after I left were also raising a girl about 1 year old. And there was no doubt that she was the child Kristen had taken. The child's parents had noticed she was missing just before I arrived at the police station, had called the police, and were searching the area. As a parent myself, the mere thought of a child being abducted is heart-wrenching. Despite Kristen's rampage, I felt truly sorry for the involved family. My husband had been returning home late or going to Kristen under the guise of business trips on weekends for months before the affair came out. So he hadn't been paying much attention to our daughter. That's why he hadn't doubted that the child Kristen brought was our daughter. To think he couldn't even recognize his own child and yet claimed he wanted custody. I was utterly dismayed. The couple who were the victims of the abduction were fortunately reunited with their child. But they were not willing to forgive Kristen and my husband. And it seemed they would remain in police custody. Afterwards, through a lawyer, I demanded a divorce and compensation from my detained husband. Weakened mentally by his arrest and subsequent firing from his job, my husband quickly agreed to both requests. My lawyer told me that upon hearing about the restraining order against approaching our daughter due to the kidnapping incident, my husband broke down crying, possibly out of regret. However, hearing about my husband's state did not sway my heart. Even if it started with my sister's lies, my husband ultimately betrayed me and my daughter. Though it was an unsuccessful attempt due to mistaken identity, he had colluded with my sister in trying to take away my daughter. I had lost all affection for him long ago. Moreover, his infatuation with my sister was so deep that he couldn't even recognize his own daughter's face, clearly showing he was unfit to be a parent. As for my sister, facing a lawsuit from the victimized couple, she asked our parents during a visit to hire a lawyer for her. But they refused and disowned her instead. Kristen was stunned by our parents' words. Throughout our lives, no matter how terribly Kristen treated me or harassed me, our parents never blamed her unilaterally. They always engaged with her properly, listening to her side and responding carefully. They always felt that perhaps some of the reasons for Kristen's troubled behavior could be their fault. And they raised both of us equally, never abandoning either of us despite the problems Kristen caused. However, even their deep love reached its limit when Kristen, now an adult, continued to obsess over me and ultimately involved not only me but also my daughter, her husband, and an unrelated child in such an incident. It seems they had finally run out of patience with her. Faced with our parents, who spoke to her as if they were talking to a stranger in an unemotional manner, Kristen was unsettled and hurriedly apologized for the trouble she caused. But it was too late. After that meeting, our parents decided it would be the last. And no matter how much Kristen requested to see them, they never met her again. The incident they caused was an unheard of case of kidnapping due to mistaken identity. And their photos and real names were prominently featured in the local newspaper. They might receive a suspended sentence since they turned themselves in. But their names have been tarnished, and living in this area will likely be difficult. By the time my divorce from my former husband was finalized, I had successfully found a job, and now I live happily every day with my adorable daughter. Living close to my parents' house, they provide full support with childcare, making life much easier than when I was married to my ex-husband. Though my daughter no longer has a father nearby, a husband who couldn't even recognize his daughter's face is unnecessary. Instead, not just me but also my parents, the three of us together, want to closely watch over my daughter's growth. My ex-husband showed up at my parents' house. "Can you pack your things and leave right away?" "What?" Ignoring my stunned silence, he continued. "My wife is pregnant." "I mean, your sister." "Yes, my ex-husband left me for my sister 5 years ago. For the sake of the child that's coming, I want to create a good educational environment. We can make much better use of this house than you ever could. Especially since you'll probably stay single forever. No one needs a barren woman like you. Understand?" Stop fussing and just leave. I sighed and shook my head. No way. What? You really should. Don't you know? Who lives in this house now? Right after that, as a large figure appeared behind me, he turned pale and started shaking. Why? My name is Mandy. I am a 35-year-old office worker. Fortunately, I seem to be somewhat respected at work. And am doing fairly well in terms of promotions among my peers. Although I am now living a stable life, it has been full of ups and downs. One of the major events in recent years was undoubtedly my divorce. The reason was my partner's infidelity. 5 years ago, my ex-husband Fred eloped. His partner was, shockingly, my own sister. Looking back, my sister had always been the type to covet what I had. So her actions were consistent, although outrageously inappropriate. At that time, Fred and I were colleagues at the company. He was gentle and attentive. I was attracted to those qualities when I was younger. Eventually, Fred also took a liking to me, and our relationship developed. After we had been dating for a while, I introduced Fred to my family, planning to marry him. So we discussed getting serious. When my sister happened to be home at the time, she saw Fred and exclaimed in surprise because they knew each other, having attended the same university. After that, my sister, Fred, and I often went shopping together. It was a very enjoyable time. This interaction continued even after Fred and I got married. However, after several such outings, I began to feel uneasy. Fred and my sister would get excited about topics I didn't know about. Or they would start going out just the two of them. Did you go out with my sister yesterday? I wanted to join.
Yeah.
Maybe next time. Feeling uneasy about that, one day, a colleague from the company where we worked invited me out for a meal. I happily accepted, only to learn a shocking truth. Apparently, Fred was seen entering a hotel, arm in arm with another woman. When I asked about the woman's features, it turned out to be my sister. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't deny it after being shown the photos. I received the photo data from my colleague and confronted Fred that very day. What is this supposed to mean? Well, it's... Fred's indecisive attitude continued as he mumbled on. So you've been betraying me all this time. The two of you must have had a great time making fun of me, huh? Was it fun? No matter what I asked, he said nothing. He just kept silent and looked down. Fred disappeared the following day. When I woke up in the morning, Fred was nowhere to be found. Thinking it couldn't be, I called my sister but couldn't reach her. It was 3 days later that I found out Fred and my sister were together. A completed divorce form was sent to the house where I lived with Fred. And around the same time, I received an email from my sister. Her email simply read, "I will be happy with Fred." Naturally, I couldn't accept that. But I couldn't protest because I didn't know where they were or how to contact them. It seems that Fred had also mailed his resignation to his workplace, cutting off that connection as well. Left with no options, I eventually agreed to the divorce. For a while after that, I couldn't get over it. I couldn't come to terms with the fact that my own sister and husband had eloped. But I couldn't stay down forever. I decided to channel my frustration and resentment into my work. While I was focused on work, I could forget about Fred and my sister. This effort paid off, and my contributions to the company were recognized. And I was given a promotion. Since then, I've been fortunate with personal connections. And now, 5 years after they ran away, I'm leading a stable life. One day, when I was off work and woke up later than usual, I thought I should make breakfast and was getting out of bed when my phone, which was by my pillow, rang. It was a call. The screen showed it was from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but I impulsively picked it up because I had just woken up. Hello, who is this? Oh, Mandy. Long time no see. It's me, Fred. Have you been well? I'm relieved you're still using this phone number. To my surprise, it was my ex-husband, Fred, on the phone. I almost fell off the bed from the shock. What? Fred? Why? Why? That's cold. We're exes after all. I thought I'd get in touch. Fred laughed as if nothing was wrong, which reminded me of the anger I thought I had forgotten. What do you mean exes? Don't joke around. How dare you contact me so brazenly? What do you want? Now, calm down. You haven't changed a bit. His carefree tone only irritated me more. Sensing this, Fred finally got to the point. Right. You're living in your parents' house now, right? Can you pack up and leave immediately? Your sister and I have decided to live there. I couldn't make sense of it at all. What kind of thought process led to that? Actually, we got married, and we've recently found out about her pregnancy. We want to create a good educational environment for the baby that's coming. Of course, you wouldn't say no, right? After all, I'm being kind by saying this. If you stay in your parents' house forever, you'll never be able to remarry. My head started to ache. I didn't want to hear such nonsense. Indeed, as he said, I had returned to my parents' home. I don't know where he got that information, but it's correct. Yes, I obviously refuse. Why should I have to give up my parents' house for you guys? When I said that, he seemed offended and replied in a harsher tone. Oh, sorry, I was wrong. I guess a 35-year-old infertile woman like you couldn't remarry anyway. When Fred and I were married, I never got pregnant. He must be referring to that, but it was a nasty way to say it. Is that all you wanted to say? I will never give up this house. Then I hung up the phone unilaterally. I didn't want to talk to him anymore. He's too selfish. To think he would try to take the house after eloping through an affair. I hope he gives up now, but who knows what will happen. Several days had passed. That day, I was busy with work from the morning, and I only managed to take a lunch break after 2 p.m. After eating lunch at my favorite diner near work, I was entering the building's entrance to return to the office when I spotted a familiar figure. No way. Why are you here? It was Fred. He had gained a considerable amount of weight compared to 5 years ago. But unmistakably, it was him. I instinctively tried to hide. But before I could, he saw me. Fred exclaimed, "Oh," and hurried over to me, flustered. "Oh, there you are. I've been waiting. About our previous conversation, when can you leave? I'd like it if you could move out by next month. I already told you no to that. And it's unbelievable that you'd come to my workplace. Just go back home." He continued with a smile on his face, but clearly annoyed. "You're saying that again. Isn't it obvious that it's better for my wife, our upcoming child, your parents and me to live together in that house rather than you living there? Am I wrong?" This was going nowhere. No matter how much I refused, Fred persisted, and I felt a kind of fear. Enough with the persistence. No matter how much you ask, it's impossible. You cheated and eloped on your own, so just live somewhere else by yourselves. As I said this, Fred frowned deeply and raised his voice. Listen. The reason I cheated was because you were infertile. If you had been able to have children, I would never have cheated. It's all your fault. So take responsibility and provide a place to live. I was too stunned to speak. The way he shifted the blame for his infidelity to me was extreme. Are you serious? I have work, so I'm leaving now. Fred looked like he wanted to say more. But he finally noticed the stares from around us and left the entrance with a parting shot. Remember this. I thought this would finally make him give up. However, I was to learn soon that I had underestimated him. A week after Fred visited my workplace. As I was relaxing at home watching TV, the doorbell suddenly rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Nevertheless, I decided to check the intercom monitor. Standing there were Fred and my sister. I'd had enough. I quickly headed to the front door and opened it forcefully. Hi, Mandy. Is your packing done? I didn't hear from you, so I came here directly. Wow, long time no see, Mandy. You heard from Fred, right? I'm having a baby. I'll let you spoil them once born. I sighed conspicuously. What's wrong? You look tired? Well, it doesn't matter. Listen. It's great that I'm having a baby, but we're out of money. So, we need to stay in this house, okay? She looked up at me pleadingly. Then Fred spoke up. Yeah. I realized recently, this house isn't yours, right? Are your parents around? Let us talk to them. It's their first grandchild, after all. They're bound to accept us. At that, I couldn't help but laugh. To think they didn't know. Why are you laughing? That's rude. Bring Mom and Dad out. What? Do you really not know? They aren't here anymore. Yes. My parents no longer lived in this house. After Fred and I divorced and I returned to my parents' house. They soon gave me this house as a living inheritance. And my parents were now enjoying their retirement in the countryside on my mother's side. So, I am the owner of this house. As I made that fact clear, both my sister and Fred were shocked. Understand? This house is mine. So, I have all the decision rights here. I stated that clearly, yet Fred still insisted on arguing. Then you can keep living here, and we can all live together again. Let's get along like before. Yes, that's a good idea. That's a great idea. It must be lonely for you to live in such a big house all by yourself, right? If we live together, everyone will be happy. Just as I was about to counter their absurd suggestions, I was interrupted by a voice asking, "Is something wrong?" "Oh, it's you. Sorry for the noise. Look, it's my ex-husband and sister I told you about." The voice belonged to my current husband. He was holding my daughter in his arms. He murmured, "I see," and greeted the bewildered Fred and my sister. "Good evening. I am Mandy's husband. And this is our daughter. Isn't she cute?" Fred and my sister were left gaping in shock. They were probably very surprised. The truth is, I had remarried. About a year after divorcing Fred, I met my current husband through a friend's introduction. Things progressed quickly between us, and we got married within 6 months of dating. Soon after, I became pregnant with our daughter. And now I'm managing both work and household duties. My husband helps with housework and childcare, allowing me to progress smoothly in my career without neglect. I hope you understand now that there's no room for you two here. My husband, my daughter, and we are a family of 3 living happily together. What? Mandy, you're not infertile? No way, that can't be true. Fred slumped to the ground, holding his head in despair. What? How can you marry such a handsome man? That's so unfair. As she stamped her feet in frustration, my husband looked down at her with a cold gaze and said, "Given that, please leave. If you approach our family again, we will call the police. Understand?" Frightened by my husband's authority and the mention of a police, Fred and his sister turned pale and fled. After that, they never appeared before me again. Struggling financially, they tried to approach Fred's parents' home. But having been disowned after the elopement scandal 5 years ago, they were quickly rejected. It's only natural. And from what I've heard through mutual friends, Fred hasn't changed and was once again embroiled in an affair, currently facing a divorce crisis. Surprisingly, the reason was shocking. In truth, my sister wasn't even pregnant. It was all a lie to try to get back to the family home. And Fred was unaware of the non-pregnancy, apparently having been deceived as well. Such lies are bound to come out quickly. Although he had eloped with my sister to have children, it became clear she wasn't pregnant, so she became unnecessary for him. Fred was desperate for children and kept engaging in affairs. However, it is unlikely that he will have children in the future. He might even be infertile. I'm not a doctor, but considering the situation, it seems highly likely. When will he realize this? Or has he already? Anyway, it no longer concerns me. That was what I thought until one day a letter from Fred arrived at our home. I was skeptical, but decided to check its contents with my husband just in case. The letter was filled with admissions like, I was diagnosed as infertile at the hospital, and I regret running away 5 years ago. It also mentioned he wanted to try again with me. Naturally, I ignored the letter. Driven by emotion, my husband tore it up. Whether Fred gave up on reconciliation because there was no reply, or he never expected one in the first place, he never sent another letter. He was selfish and clingy to the end. Such a man should be quickly forgotten as I walk my own path. Now, I live with my kind and caring husband and our lovely daughter. I am determined to protect the happiness we have finally seized at all costs. Wow, so high. Looking up from the bottom of a high-rise apartment building. The sun is so dazzling, I can't see all the way to the top. This high-rise apartment. I have finally purchased a home on the 20th floor of this apartment building. Living the dream of a high-rise apartment life. I thought, am I really going to live here with my husband? I can't help but grin with joy. However, right after moving in, I was suddenly plunged into hell. My husband had invited his affair partner over. Then, he handed me a divorce paper saying, "Sign this, and please leave now." Can such a thing even be right? I couldn't keep up with the sudden change in situation. I was kicked out without even spending a week in my long-awaited high-rise apartment life. I challenged my husband to divorce negotiations. He signed the contract papers without reading them, being foolish and careless. I couldn't help but smirk to myself. After that, my husband and his affair partner ended up in a serious mess. My name is Gina. I'm a 38-year-old office worker. My husband, Aaron, is 10 years younger at 28. I have been working as a clerk at the same company since graduating from college. As my colleagues left one by one to get married, I ended up in a senior position. My joy is to go to a nearby diner during lunch break to eat a daily set meal. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I worked every day just for this $5 pleasure. That's where I met my husband, Aaron. One day, the diner was full, and I ended up sharing a table with Aaron. He started a conversation with me, we hit it off. Exchanged contacts, started dating, and eventually got married. Aaron was working as a part-timer at a nearby construction site. It's strange for me, his wife, to say, but he is quite handsome and a bit frivolous. I still wonder why he chose me as a marriage partner. Could there have been younger, cuter girls around? However, Aaron would say, "I like you, Gina. I fell for your calm and steady demeanor. I'm also getting on in years, and I don't know if we can have children. And I'm not planning to quit my job. Is that okay?" "It's fine. Age difference doesn't matter." Saying so, my husband hugged my shoulders. Until I got married, I lived with my parents. I thought many times about moving out because it's embarrassing to depend on my parents at my age. But I wanted to save money. That's because there was something I wanted. It was a high-rise apartment. When I was over 35, thinking that marriage might be impossible, I set a goal to buy a high-rise apartment as my final abode and aimed to save $100,000. Oh, I hadn't told my husband yet. He seemed satisfied with our small apartment life. And didn't seem interested in high-rise apartments. The life with just the two of us in a small apartment was warm and satisfying. However, suddenly my husband took a certain action. It was about 3 years after we got married. Aaron finally became a full-time employee from a construction site part-timer. But his salary was almost the same as before. Fortunately, my salary had increased due to my years of service and performance. So together, we could barely make ends meet. One day, Aaron came home in a good mood, and the first thing he said was, "Gina, I've signed a contract for a high-rise apartment." My mind went blank. Today, I was walking and just happened to see a sign for a high-rise apartment model room. I had some extra time and went in to kill time. Then I realized, high-rise apartments are amazing. It's a really tall building. He spoke enthusiastically, using gestures. I thought, amazing? What else? He really lacks vocabulary. But how did it end up with you signing a contract? Well, they said if I signed right away, they would include a TV and a fridge. It's a good deal, right? Aaron answered, looking satisfied. Even I had to hold my head in dismay at his foolishness. You know, you've just fallen for a sales pitch. Buying a high-rise apartment requires a huge amount of money. Down payments and loans. Do you understand? I explained slowly and carefully to him as if he were a child. Then he said, "Oh, that's fine. They said no down payment needed. It's a limited time offer." I found a really good deal, didn't I? He answered proudly, puffing out his chest. Wait a minute. No down payment means, it's not that we don't have to pay anything, but that it will be added to the loan, right? Did he understand that? It didn't seem like he did. What about the loan? Can you take out a loan? That's the thing, I'm young, so it's easy to get a loan. I'm working, after all, I don't really understand, but it seems okay. I only felt distrust. As usual, Aaron was probably sweet-talked by the salesperson. And signed the contract without even reading it. Aaron has that kind of personality. Suddenly, my dream of a high-rise apartment felt like it had appeared before me. accompanied by a great deal of anxiety. When buying a high-rise apartment, we need to compare various places and think it over. It's not a cheap purchase, you know. But it's a really beautiful place. It's a very tall building. Gina, you'll definitely like it. Well, it's called a high-rise apartment because it's a tall building. If it wasn't tall, it would just be a regular apartment. There's so much to point out. Let's go see it together this Sunday. You'll definitely like it. All right. On Sunday, we went to see the high-rise apartment he had bought. Given its location and the surrounding environment, and the fact that it's on the top floor, there was nothing to complain about. Having worked hard to get a high-rise apartment since I was single, I really liked the property. It was a moment when happiness overcame anxiety. It's wonderful. Right? I have a good eye, don't I? Then, the salesperson came over. Hello. Thank you for coming today. You really are a very lucky person. Such a nice room would sell quickly. It's fate. Oh, and the loan has been approved under your name. You can live here anytime now. Gina. We did it. The application was approved. Aaron was as happy as if he had passed some kind of test. Well, it's good that the application was approved, but the real problem would start now. Did he understand about the repayments? I'm surprised it was approved. But, how many years is the loan for? Huh? It's for 35 years. 35 years? Wait a minute. I'll be nearly 80 years old by then. I can't work that long. It's okay. We'll manage somehow. I'm young. I felt a slight dizziness. 35 years. What is he thinking? Especially when I'm the one mostly paying for our current living expenses. His salary doesn't even reach $1,000. How does he plan to repay the loan with that? I'm really astounded by his lack of planning. It seems the only way is for me to dip into my savings and make an early repayment on the loan. I have to persevere. That's what I decided. But without knowing how I felt, Aaron took a shocking action. We moved immediately. We could live in the high-rise apartment I had longed for. Excited, I wanted to move in as soon as possible. Thus, we started our life in the high-rise apartment. One day, I was cleaning the house on my day off. Suddenly, Aaron came back home. Gina, I quit my job. He said this with a mischievous smile, as if he was embarrassed. What? What do you mean? Well, the boss changed. He stopped praising my work and started pushing only menial tasks on me. I just thought, that's enough, and said, I quit. Inside, I wondered, why does he always do this? I was at a loss for words because he had quit his job with no remorse or plan. Now listen, we have this loan for 35 years. And yet, you quit your job. Couldn't you have endured it a little longer? You're nagging. Don't worry. I'll start job hunting again soon. Don't worry, I'm still young, and I'll find something. Life will work itself out. I felt nothing but anxiety at his baseless reassurance. I added a night job and piecework to my current job, desperately working to contribute to the loan repayment. I was really being dragged around by his whims. Meanwhile, while I worked hard, he just fiddled with his phone and didn't look for a job. Instead, he locked himself in a room and played with his phone even more. It felt like I was the only one trying hard. I was utterly exhausted from my daily life. One day, I finished work early and wanted to take a nap, so I came home earlier than usual. I had a part-time job in the evening and piecework at night. I needed to rest whenever I could. What was he doing? Probably on his phone again? It would be nice if he was job hunting on the computer. I'm home. As I opened the front door, there were flashy high heels discarded there. I wondered, is it a visitor? Maybe someone from the building management? Or perhaps it's someone related to work? Hoping it was the latter, I headed to the living room, where I heard a woman's voice. This is super funny. I'm laughing so much. I thought, that's a very young woman's voice. When I opened the door, I was met with a shocking scene. A young woman was there. She was very flashy, heavily made up, and wearing a miniskirt. She looked like a gal. Moreover, she snuggled up to my husband. And they were laughing together while looking at his phone. They were even arm in arm. Excuse me. What are you doing? Who are you? I was so shocked that I stood there dumbfounded. Aaron noticed me. Oh, Gina. You're home early today. Welcome back. He greeted me as usual, as if nothing was wrong, without a hint of guilt. Your wife? Oh, an older wife, huh?
Yeah.
Definitely older. Oh my, do you have gray hair? Saying this, she reached out with her flamboyantly decorated nails to touch my hair. I instinctively brushed her hand away. Hey, what's going on here? Who is this person? Oh, this is Jenny, my next wife. She's just 23 years old. Saying this, my husband and the flashy girl smiled at each other. What is happening? Is this a dream? So, I'm divorcing Gina today. So please leave. He told me this huge news in his usual tone. What? Also, here's the divorce paper. I've already signed it, so you just need to sign it and submit it to the law office. Wait a minute. What is this? Even as a joke, this is too much. Divorce? Why? He coldly responded to my panic. Do you think as you get older, your brain starts to slow down? Can't you see what's around you? You've always ridiculed me. I'm sick of being with someone older. I'm going to live here with her from today, so just sign the divorce paper. Do you understand now? What is this? I felt like I was seeing a side of him I never knew. That ruthless face and cold words. I never knew he had such a face. Then, with a smile, he shooed me away as if chasing away a dog. I stood there dumbfounded, unable to say anything. The girl named Jenny, staying comfortably and looking at the spectacular view from the window, said without any remorse, "Wow, it's super beautiful. Lucky to see this every day. Did this outrageous girl steal my husband? What was this situation? Jenny, did you approach my husband knowing he was married?" Of course. He was wearing a ring. Well, he approached me so strongly that I just went along with it. And living in a house like this, it's just what I wished for. Don't worry, I'll make him happy. Just go and submit the divorce papers, old lady. Saying that, she burst out laughing. Calling me an old lady, laughing repeatedly. Jenny's laughter was infuriating. But I was even more angered by my husband laughing along with her. However, Jenny is indeed young. Her style is impeccable, and her hair dyed a bright red shone glossy. Her skin was smooth and supple. A piercing shone from her belly button under her short t-shirt. Her toenails were painted perfectly. Meanwhile, I was disheveled from my busy work schedule. I always wear the same suit in subdued colors to work. I felt a void within myself. Even though you're around your 40s? Maybe if you'd taken a bit more care of your appearance, this wouldn't have happened. That knocked me out. I couldn't muster the energy to respond anymore. Aaron pushed me out of the door and locked it behind me saying, "Goodbye." Unable to resist or even bark back, I was robbed of my husband and the high-rise apartment. How did I even walk back? Before I knew it, I was at my parents' house. My parents were surprised by my sudden return. Seeing their faces, the tears I had been holding back overflowed. What happened, Gina? Did something happen? Even asked, I didn't want to recall that scene and couldn't explain. I just cried in my mother's arms. She sensed what had happened and let me cry to my heart's content. That day, I became so tired of everything and fell asleep, overwhelmed by fatigue. And woke up the next morning. Good morning. Someone had come. A familiar voice. A woman led by my mother came in. Samantha. Gina. Samantha is my childhood friend. She has always been very smart and now works respectably as a lawyer. It seems I had inadvertently brought the divorce paper signed by my husband when I returned home. Seeing this, my mother guessed there had been trouble between us. And thinking I would find it easier to talk to a professional and childhood friend than my parents, she had called Samantha over. Gina, can you tell me what happened when you feel ready? How I married a man 10 years my junior, how he had unilaterally contracted a high-rise apartment. How he quit his job on a whim, leaving me to manage all the living expenses and the mortgage by myself. And how soon after moving, he brought his mistress home and abruptly pushed the divorce papers on me, forcibly kicking me out. I told her everything. Samantha and I got angry with them together. I see. Got it. Let's give them what they deserve. These two who have caused Gina so much pain. With that, she started the procedures immediately. She drafted a divorce agreement. We'll write the conditions here. Then, if they sign it, that's okay. From what I've heard, this is the best way to deal with your ex-husband. She's such a dependable friend. I'm lucky to have such a friend. First, you'll claim alimony against your ex-husband. If he should delay the payment, the court could seize their assets. This will probably force your ex-husband to give up the high-rise apartment. Gina, you just need to get their signatures on this document. I know it's hard to meet them again, but this is to teach those two a lesson. Samantha took my hand and said, "You can do it." The following day, I went to the high-rise apartment. When I rang the bell, Jenny, a gal, dressed in an apron, came out. Oh, it's the old lady. Good timing, I was just about to get rid of your belongings. My clothes won't fit because of them. So I was just going to throw them away. Come on in. Jenny was completely acting like a resident here, and I was treated like a visitor. Old lady, want some juice? She was using what used to be my kitchen as if it were her own. It was frustrating. I wouldn't forgive her. Where's Aaron? I'll call him now. Jenny mockingly called out to Aaron in a wifely manner, smirking, "Honey?" I managed to suppress the anger bubbling up inside me, and in front of the two of them, I handed over the agreement that Samantha had prepared. What's this? I'll agree to the divorce. But I want you to sign this. Aaron sighed with annoyance as he looked at the document filled with complex words and fine print. Aaron, who isn't the brightest, obviously couldn't read it. He quickly grabbed a pen and said, "So I just need to sign this, right?" Everything was going according to plan. The other party was someone who would contract a high-rise apartment on a whim without thinking it through. There was no way he would check every detail of this agreement. I confirmed his signatures and said, "Thank you. I'm going to submit the divorce papers now." Aaron and Jenny celebrated in front of me, hugging each other. They should enjoy it while they can. Once I submit the divorce papers, I won't come here ever again because this high-rise apartment will be under your name. We'll be strangers from now on. We will have nothing to do with each other. Other procedures will be handled through my lawyer. Aaron paused at the word procedures, but then smiled and said, well, okay. He's foolish, but let's give him credit for reacting to the word procedures at the end. The call from my ex-husband came sooner than expected. He was furious. Hey, what's this bill? This alimony is way too high. That's the amount calculated by the lawyer. Make sure you pay it in full. Hey. There's no way I can pay for this. I have loans too. You're too scary, you know. He always has an excuse, ignoring what he has done. Thinking I would bail him out if he says he can't do it or he can't understand. Start taking some responsibility. If you don't have the money, borrow it from your parents or something. It's none of my business. Don't bother me about it. We're strangers now. Just pay the money, understood? Discuss the rest with the lawyer. With that, I hung up and blocked his number. The document stipulated a lump sum payment for the alimony. I wondered what he would do next. Sure enough, I got a call from my mother-in-law. Gina, my son says he needs money and wants to borrow some. Do you know anything about this? She sounded clueless, even though I had told Aaron to explain things to his parents. That idiot. Exactly. Reluctantly, I explained the whole situation to her. I mean, can't something be done about the alimony? No, it can't. But you got along with my son before. Maybe just a little. You are not wrong at all, but I'm sorry, your son shattered my heart. I can't compromise on this. Plus, I already have his signature. Please make sure the lump sum payment for the alimony is made. I could hear her crying, but I'm not so kind as to feel sympathy at this point. A few days later, when I went to the bank, the alimony had been paid in full. It seems Samantha intervened, and after hearing everything, my in-laws were furious and confronted Aaron and Jenny. By then, the two were already fighting over the alimony. Because he signed the documents without reading. He was overwhelmed by the large amount of alimony, and he had fallen out of favor with Jenny. Moreover, my in-laws suggested selling the high-rise apartment to pay for the alimony. Aaron had no choice but to leave the high-rise apartment. Jenny was not in love with Aaron. She just wanted to live with him in the high-rise apartment. In fact, she didn't care about him at all. Jenny just wanted to play house in the high-rise apartment with its beautiful view. As expected, Jenny left the house calling him a fool. Aaron lost everything and ended up returning to his part-time job life. He always said, "I'm young." But he's not young anymore. He can't be picky about part-time jobs anymore. Plus, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. The rumor is that he became an old nightclub worker. Just thinking about him being called old man, by young people makes me laugh. Maybe I should visit him as a customer. But I won't. With the alimony collected, I have purchased a vintage apartment. No more high-rise apartments for me. My new home is a vintage apartment, 10 years old but renovated, with perfect location conditions. It never looks outdated. After learning about it on social media, my goal became a vintage apartment. And being good at saving, I acquired it quickly. Samantha, who supported me, often comes to visit. Since she's also single, she's been suggesting we might live together here. Lately, I've been thinking that might be a good idea. Spending our later years together as friends might not be so bad. I recently treated my supportive parents to a short trip to a lake. I'm surrounded by wonderful people and feel happy. In a way, I could find this happiness thanks to my ex-husband and that girl. I plan to keep smiling into the future.